Woo! That trail's amazing, so flowy.
That was rough for me. I tell you what, the back end was skipping all over the place.
Suspension's still locked out, you idiot.
Oh, rookie. That must have been low. Why I was so fast up that climb. As a pro racer, something that I really experimented and spent a lot of time testing was my suspension. It can have a massive effect on how much grip and how you can track through the rougher sections.
Yeah, pro racers often learn how to set their suspension up by trying lots of different things, but also learning the hard way by doing it wrong. These are the top 7 most common suspension setup mistakes. Number 1, not actually setting up your suspension. It often surprised me as a coach how many people were riding around on really expensive bikes and they had no idea how to play around with their shocks. So just try experimenting. You can't really mess your suspension up by putting air in or playing around with clickers. If you get stuck, read the manufacturer's instructions. They'll often have a base setting. So just try experimenting.
Once you've got that suspension set up, it is really easy to become quite complacent, thinking that you've already got it best dialed in. But with changing trail conditions and changing trails, you can actually just alternate a few clicks here and there. It can make a huge difference. So what I want to say to you guys is, try a little bit of experimenting and note those settings down so that you can always go back to what feels safest for you. A big mistake that you see riders actually doing is not having enough damping on, and by that I mean the rebound circuit. So when you're coming down a fast straight like this and you're bombing, you're going to find that the back end is skipping around. It's not gripping to the ground and making you move forward. So how are you going to fix this? Well, what you want to do is you want to wind a few clicks of rebound to make it that little bit slower, just so it kind of works with the terrain beneath you. And you'll find if you're jumping as well, it's going to give you a little bit of a buck. So when you take off, it's going to sort of ping you towards the front of the bike. So dialing in that rebound will just make an easier ride all round, whether it be jumps or bombing down straights and through rock gardens.
Not setting your sag correctly. I always say try and go for about 25 to 30% on the rear shock, so just get all your weight onto the bike and try and get that O-ring about 1/3 of the way along the stroke. It's the same theory for the fork. I use that O-ring and I actually try and get about 20% sag on the fork, and I'll do this when I'm riding along. I do find it's probably not quite as accurate on the fork as it is for the shock, so I'll still play around with the air pressure a little bit. That isn't the end of the story though. If you set your sag correctly and you're still bottoming out too much, I would then think about adding some more air volume spacers to your suspension.
You see, a lot of people are actually adding extra pressure into both their fork and their shock to make it climb a little bit better, but this does not solve the solution when you're descending. You actually find that with that extra pressure in the shock, you're not going to have as much grip. Those small bumps, you're going to be jittering around on them. The tires aren't going to be gripping and you're going to be thrown off trail. So make sure that you just set up your sag correctly, and then from that point what you can actually use is, if you have it, this little lockout lever right here. You've got a trail mode and then also a climb mode, which is almost like a fully locked out shock. So just experimenting using them, you actually find you get to the hill a lot quicker.
Don't forget that conditions will actually affect your suspension. So in cold conditions, the oil is going to thicken up in your shock and it's going to put more damping onto it. So it's going to feel harder and the rebound will feel slower. The opposite, in hot conditions, the oil will thin out, your suspension will feel a little bit softer and the rebound can be really fast. Your shock will also heat up on really long descents where it's getting rebounded and compressed an awful lot. That's going to heat up everything. So your shock could get faster near the bottom of a big downhill. The final mistake is to think that full travel should be achieved a lot on rides. Yes, you should use all the suspension in extreme circumstances, but if you're too far into your suspension often, especially on the fork, it can end up sending your weight onto the front wheel when you don't expect it, maybe in a corner that you hit really hard, and potentially over the bars. So there's some common suspension setup mistakes. Scotty, when you got your first full suspension bike, what was one that you made?
Maybe I think probably having not enough rebound, having it too fast and just coming into those sections, back end going everywhere. What about you?
That's a common one. I would say just not playing with the clickers enough. It's only when I was a pro, I did some testing with some suspension companies and we tried loads of different settings, went for a ride, made some notes, and it really worked out.
Yeah, it definitely does. Let us know in the comment section down below what the biggest mistake you made, or if we've missed one.
Click over here for how to set your sag.
And click right here for how to get more grip by setting your suspension.
Click on this thing here, this big red logo, that'll take you through, and you'll subscribe to the channel.
And if you like having your suspension set up right, then what do?
give us a thumb up like.
There we go.
Don't forget to click on that link to go through to our shop and buy some GMBN merchandise.